What's up, guys? I'm here to give you your top 10 quarterbacks this year for fantasy football. The year 2016. How this is going to work, I'm going to go 1 through 10 and also two sleepers to give you. I'm going to tell you who they are, give you a brief description why I like them, and then give you the stats from last year and then this year as well. I also may refer to the last year's stats earlier in the description of each player as well. So, a quick overview of the quarterback position this year. It is very deep. You can get a lot of good quarterbacks late. The biggest difference between early run quarterbacks and late run quarterbacks is their floor and their ceiling. Now, what I mean by that, their ceiling, what is the very, very best that they could do? A lot of the top quarterbacks have almost an unlimited ceiling. But the biggest difference is their floor. What at the worst are they going to do? Someone like Cam Newton has a very high floor because he's going to run for at least 5 touchdowns, at least 400 yards, then also throw about 30 touchdowns and 3,000 yards. That's at the worst. But then you look at someone, way, way lower. Even how about Tom Brady this year? He's not in my top 10. Spoiler. He's not a sleeper either. His floor is really low. Why? Because he's missing about a third of the fantasy season. And that's a huge, huge portion. I mean, you're going to miss him for half, and maybe a little less. Almost half, really, of the whole regular season. So his floor is really low. Therefore, Cam is better than Tom Brady. Plus, Cam has a higher potential. There you go. Potential and their floor. So number one, I already talked about him. Cam Newton, number one. How could you go wrong? He's a perfect all-around quarterback. He's an incredible physical specimen. I was watching the NFL Top 10, which he was number one, by the way. He's 6'6", 260. I really think he's close to 240, 250. But it's all muscle, 4% body fat. They can't make that in a lab. That's what the guy said. I thought that was pretty funny. But he's all-around quarterback. He can do it all. He has Kelvin Benjamin back this year. That makes him even better. Now, what he did last year was one of the better all-around seasons by a quarterback ever. Do I think he will repeat? Almost. Last year, he threw for 3,800 yards, 35 touchdowns, ran for 610 rushing touchdowns. Very good. Is he going to repeat? Almost. 4,200 yards, 35 passing touchdowns, 500 rushing yards, and 8 rushing touchdowns. So a little bit less on the rushing, a little bit more on the passing, which I think that's fair. I don't think he's going to be as dominant as he was last year. Still going to be amazing. Still number one quarterback. You can get him late first round, early second. Number two, this is where my first controversy may happen. A lot of people probably going to be upset. But number two, Russell Wilson. Yes, I can already hear the screams. What? What about this or this? Here's why. Just listen to this. Russell Wilson last year had a sneakily good season. That along with Marshawn Lynch is no longer there. Jimmy Graham will be healthy. And Jimmy Graham will be involved. So those things all together, and he's another year older, so he knows the league more. Scary is the word I'm going to say. His ceiling is extremely high. It is as high as Cam, maybe even higher. He has a lot of weapons. Not really, I shouldn't say that. He's a couple of really good weapons. He does have Doug Baldwin. He does have Jimmy Graham. And Tyler Lockett. He could be very, very good. And he's a dual threat quarterback. He definitely does run. This is why I have him at number two. He can do it all. And he protects the ball very well. Doesn't throw too many interceptions. Doesn't fumble too often. Very high ceiling. And he doesn't get injured. He stays healthy. That's a huge thing for the quarterback positioning, especially for running quarterbacks. Last year, he threw for 4,000 yards, 34 touchdowns, 500 rushing yards, and only 1 rushing touchdown. This year, I project him for 4,200 yards, 35 passing touchdowns, 500 rushing yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns. If you remember what I projected for Cam, extremely similar, just 4 less rushing touchdowns. I project him very high this year, super high on Russell Wilson. Like him quite a bit. You can pick him, I would say late second, early third, maybe even late third, which I think would be a really, really good pick for him if you want to get a good quarterback early. Number 3, Aaron Rodgers. No surprise. If he's healthy, he has to be top 3, guaranteed. And he is. He's a very, very close second to Russell Wilson. The only difference between him and Russell Wilson in terms of why he's number 3 is he is a little bit injury prone, and he's not as much as a dual threat quarterback. But he throws for more than either of these guys. He is Jordy Nelson back this year. If he stays healthy, he could be number 1. I would not be surprised if he's number 1. He has that high ceiling that I was talking about. Last year, Aaron Rodgers, 3,800 yards, 31 touchdowns, 350 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. This year, I project 4,800 passing yards, 40 touchdowns, 300 rushing yards, and 3 touchdowns. So you say, okay, that's way more than the other guys. It's 5 more touchdowns and not that much less rushing and rushing touchdowns. Yes, the reason he is number 3, injury prone. He doesn't turn the ball over almost at all, it seems. But that injury, will Jordy Nelson be back fully? Will he be able to contribute? He's number 3. You can pick him in the same place as Russell Wilson, though I think people like to rank him higher. A-Rod, you can pick him second round, early third. Because of his name, he's going to go early. Moving on to number 4, Ben Roethlisberger. No, this is the first non-dual threat quarterback that we've had on this top 10. There are a couple more, don't worry. This guy has potential to spare. He missed, I don't know how many games last year. He has a ton of weapons. He has Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Ladarius Green. They just picked up a great receiving tight end. This guy is scary. He has all the potential. Again, he's lower because he is injury prone. Last year, he threw for 3,900 yards, 21 touchdowns, 28 rushing yards, no touchdowns. I project him for, listen to this, 5,000 yards, 35 passing touchdowns, and then again 50 yards, and I'll give him a touchdown. I gave each of the quarterbacks, especially the pocket quarterbacks, at least 1 touchdown, just to say, hey, look, they could do this. Big Ben, I like him a lot. He's number 4 for me. Number 5, Andrew Luck. Now, this is one of those really high ceiling, but also a really low floor. Andrew Luck, he is a dual threat quarterback to a point. He's more on the Aaron Rodgers side. He'll run for 300-400 yards, but he has a lot of weapons. His defense is not very good. They're going to have to put up points, and he doesn't have the best running game. Frank Gore, he's there. He's getting old. Last year, he threw for 1,800 yards, 15 touchdowns, and also ran for 200 yards, no rushing touchdowns. A lot of that was due to all the time he missed because of his shoulder injury. Now, this year, if he stays healthy, and that is a big if, 4,500 yards, 35 touchdowns, 300 rushing yards, and 5 touchdowns. And the reason he's lower, 1, because he is injury prone, and number 2, he's actually pretty turnover prone. Throws a lot of picks, fumbles the ball a lot, but he has really high potential. If you pick Andrew Luck in the 3rd or 4th round, he could be the number 1 quarterback this year. After that, number 6, we go to the people who will not be number 1 quarterback, but could push for top 3 or definitely top 5. Number 6, Blake Bortles, another one you say, whoa, what is he doing here? But number 6, Blake Bortles, when I read you his numbers from last year, you will be surprised. So starting off, he has a ton of weapons. Allen Hurns, Allen Robinson, Julius Thomas, and then TJ Yeldon and Chris Ivory now. Weapons to spare. He's a big quarterback. He can run the ball. I suspect he will again this year. He's young. He's his 3rd year. He has a lot of potential. He is one of those high ceiling guys, but he does have somewhat of a low floor. And he also turns the ball over quite a bit. He had close to 20 interceptions. Did he have 16? I I think he had 19 interceptions last year, which is quite a lot for a guy that's over one a game. But this last year he threw for 4,400 yards, 35 touchdown passes. Also ran for 300 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Now you hear that and you say, "Wow, that's Blake Bortles." But I project this year almost an exact same year: 4,500 yards, 35 touchdowns, 300 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Almost the exact same year as last year. This guy is a high reward, but also somewhat of a high risk. He will turn the ball over. But if he does not turn the ball over, he is definitely in a top 5 conversation in terms of fantasy quarterbacks. And his defense is not very good. It is getting better. They're going to have to put up a lot of points, a lot of shootouts. They also play in not the best division. Look for him. Number 6, Blake Bortles. Number 7, Drew Brees. We all know this guy. He's been in the league for, seems like forever. Always puts up monster numbers. This year, he is getting old. So I only expect a somewhat regression. Doesn't have the best weapons. They did add Colby Fleener this year, which is really good. But in terms of receivers, he has Brandon Cooks. Other than that, it's very dicey. How good is Willie Snead, you know? With Drew Brees, he's going to put up numbers. Their defense is awful. So he's going to have to put up a ton of points. Plus, they play in a dome. They play in their division. Their division is in the South, so a lot of good weather. Drew Brees last year, 4,900 yards, 32 touchdowns, 20 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. This year, I project him very similar: 4,800 yards, 30 touchdowns, 50 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. So almost the exact same year, just a small regression. You know what you're going to get with him. He does throw. He's somewhat turnover prone, though not nearly as much as Bortles or Luck, for sure. You know what you're going to get. You can pick him probably late 4th, early 5th, maybe even late 5th. He could slide a little bit because of his age, but we'll see. Number 7, Drew Brees. Moving on to number 8, Carson Palmer. Really, he's right there with Drew Brees. You get him in the same position. Palmer has so many weapons. His top 3 receivers, John Brown, number 3, 2, Michael Floyd, and Larry Fitzgerald, number 1. That's incredible. And then to throw in David Johnson out of the backfield, crazy. So we'll go see what he does this year. Last year, I project him the exact same as last year, pretty much. Last year, 4,600 yards, 35 touchdowns, 20 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown, I believe. I'm not sure if that's right, actually. And then this year, exact same thing: 4,600 yards, 35 touchdowns, 20 rushing yards, and a touchdown. You know what you're going to get to him. The only reason he is this low, he is somewhat injury prone. Granted, the past year or two, he's been great. At number 9, we kind of dropped down a tier here. Eli Manning. I know a lot of people going, okay, now this guy is not very good. I think he has a super high potential. He has a lot of good weapons. He has Odell Beckham Jr. Just that alone makes him worthy of this high of a ranking. And he does put up a lot of good numbers. The reason he is this low, he turns the ball over so much. He stays healthy. He's not a dual threat. But if he does not turn the ball over, he's the guy that could be top 5. Eli Manning last year, 4,400 yards, 35 touchdowns, and also ran for 60 yards. No rushing touchdowns. This year, I'm projecting for 4,800 yards, 38 passing touchdowns, 50 yards rushing, and 1 rushing touchdown. More yards and touchdowns than last year. He just has to stay away from those turnovers. As long as he does that, he's golden. Number 10, Andy Dalton. Another one. Why is he this high? He has some good weapons. He can somewhat run the ball out of the backfield. For him, he has to stay healthy and not turn the ball over. Last year, he had 3,200 yards, 25 touchdowns, also ran for 150 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. If he stays healthy, I think he can get 4,200 yards, 33 touchdown passes, 200 rushing yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns. He missed, I think, 3 games last year, maybe 4. I don't quite remember when he broke his finger. But he's a good quarterback. If he's the 10th ranked quarterback, you can get him really late, 7th round, maybe even 8th round if he slides. That's the 10th worst quarterback. If you're in a 12-team league or in a 10-team league, that's kind of the worst that you can do unless other people pick backup quarterbacks really early, which I do not recommend unless you have a late pick. If you pick Andy Dalton, I do suggest you pick a backup quarterback somewhat soon. So that's number 10. I'll give you 2 quick sleepers. Derek Carr, really like him. A lot of weapons. Young quarterback. Threw for 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, ran for over 100 yards. This year, 4,200 yards, 35 touchdowns, and also over 100 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown. I really like him this year as a sleeper. And then a bonus one, Matt Ryan is really low in a lot of rankings because he only threw 21 touchdown passes last year. I think that number definitely jumps. He threw for 4,500 yards last year. And this year I project same thing, 4,500 yards, but 28 touchdowns. A great sleeper, especially if you're in a 12 or 14 team league and you're like, I don't want to pick a quarterback early. Look for Matt Ryan in those late rounds. I mean, you're talking like 10th, 11th, 12th round. I've seen him go. 13, I've seen him go, which is just insane. So there you go, Matt Ryan. Really quick, 1 through 10. Cam Newton, number 1. Russell Wilson, 3 Aaron Rodgers, 4 Big Ben, 5 Andrew Luck, 6 Blake Bortles, 7 Drew Brees, 8 Carson Palmer, 9 Eli Manning, 10 Andy Dalton, and then the 2 sleepers, Derek Carr and Matt Ryan. Thank you guys for watching. I will be getting out the top 10 running backs, receivers, and tight ends coming in the next week or so. All right, thank you, and have a great day.